Good evening, guys. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Bayo Puddicombe. Yeah, so I am the other Bayo, and we're not twins. It just so happens that it's a fairly popular name back where we come from. Yeah, so my name is Bayo Puddicombe. I represent Chop Up Games. We're a game development studio in Nigeria, and I'm just going to be talking about what we call for me, what we see as the future of mobile games in Africa in general. And what we've done is we've kind of looked into the future by looking at the past. And I'll go into that a bit more as I get into my talk. So first of all, let me talk about my company. So Chop Up, we're one of Nigeria's leading gaming studios, mobile gaming studios, and I can say that very easily because I can count the number of gaming studios in Nigeria on my hand. So anywhere you cut it, we're one of the leading. And yeah, for us, we develop locally relevant games. We develop games with, and a focus on African culture, African stories, African themes, because we have a lot of stuff, we have a lot of content in our history that's just not celebrated and is not being promoted through this media. And we felt that that was a huge opportunity for us. And even on a personal level, I'll go into that a bit more as we proceed. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So we try to capture aspects of culture, things that people can relate to, the crazy bus drivers on the streets. I hear they're in Johannesburg as well, and they have matatus in Kenya. We have our own version, and those guys are just totally wild, They get a couple of shots in the morning before hitting the roads. I won't say anymore, but yeah, they're totally crazy. So we make games about stuff like that, things that our people could relate to. But one of the challenges we've had, especially when talking to people outside Africa, and even when we talk to people at home that like games, games are for kids, and you want to distract them, they need to be reading their books. But that's not all there is to gaming, and I'm sure, saying that I'm preaching to the choir, you guys understand what I'm talking about. But the major challenge we have is that when we talk about games to people outside of Africa, this is what they see. So they hear Africa and they see the starving children. So when you start talking gaming to them, it's like, hey, here's a starving child, give him Call of Duty. You're doing good. It's so horrible. And you're like, you have to tell them the whole of Africa is not like that, and not all games are violent. It's a big challenge, and it's just because that's the narrative that has been shared all over and over again. But there's a different side to the story. There's this concept of Africa Rising, and that's all about how Africa has changed so much over the last couple of years. And my short time here, I've heard a lot about how South Africa has changed. I think it was 2 days ago. We were in a certain part of the city, I think it's Hillsborough, and we had the I hope I get this right, Pointe City apartments, and there's a lot of history there. And even with that, what our host was telling us was that there's been so much change that 10, 15 years ago, he couldn't be able to organize tours and take people around because that was such a dangerous part of town. So things are changing, and there's another story to Africa. These kids are African kids, and they are growing up, and they're going to look for ways to entertain themselves, whether it's comic books, whether it's video, whether it's games. And where's the content for them? Yes, there are a lot of games out there, but is anybody really making anything for these guys? Because for me, it's a personal thing. I grew up playing games, and apart from the complimentary back build, maybe in Street Fighter you put a Bison in there, or Barrow rather, throw him in there. Black characters were underrepresented, and it's not as if I hold anything against the designers of the game, but when you create something, it's an expression of yourself. So you're going to come from what you know, what you've experienced. One of my co-visitors, Kofi, was speaking yesterday about how he asked some Chinese people to do a representation of his country, and they put a dragon in it because that's what they know. And there's nothing wrong with that. challenge is that there are too few black people making games. So because so that connection is not there. If you don't understand the character, if you can't see it through the character's eyes, it's a bit difficult to interpret, what they experience on a daily basis. So that's kind of like our reason for being, and that's what we believe is very, very, it's going to drive the game industry in Africa. And something interesting I've also noticed is that most of the guys developing games here are not developing for Africa. That I find very interesting. Yeah.
My reason for it is because more US people download my mobile games than the African continent.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of volume.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 300 million.
Yeah.
As opposed to the African continent is split up.
Yes.
South Africa, whatever. So you're talking just a larger seed.
Okay, I totally understand that.
Yeah.
I totally understand that. But I'll say again, we are bullish on Africa, and this is kind of like our reason for being. We may explore other areas, but this is, for us, this is huge. This is big. Yeah.
I think another thing that Mike was going to look at is how, like, for them, like outside of China or whatever,
Yeah.
the availability, like the majority of us, or the majority of the people in the country in Africa, don't have the kind of resources that people like in the suburbs have, like the Wi-Fi's, the whatever, the laptops, the computers. I mean, until we moved to the suburbs, I only had a laptop or started creating games at like what, 10?
Okay.
And I'm sure a couple of I'm not racist. I'm not racist.
No. See, I have your back, so it's all on me, right? I know I'm treading on it.
Yes.
It's shaky ground. You have to be careful.
Everyone, just hold interjections until the end for questions, please. Just let Bayo finish his thought.
No. I think it's fine. I like this.
No, it's okay. Yeah. It's for the campaigns.
Okay. All right. So I totally agree with you, and that's why that's one of the major reasons why we develop for now only mobile games, because we know that mobile is the platform for Africa. And for Nigeria, for instance, mobile internet penetration was less than 10% up until around 2009. And the major thing that changed was that the mobile operators started offering data plans. So you could pop a SIM in your phone and it would automatically configure, and you were online. And now internet penetration has shot up to about 45%, I believe, at the last count. Africa is a mobile-first continent. So that for most of the people on the continent who are going online, mobile is the primary. In fact, Facebook says that 100% of their users from Africa access through mobile. And for some, it's their primary connection device. So yeah, I understand where you're coming from as well, and that's why we've made certain decisions. But it's not going to work, out of the box. We can't try the systems or what's worked for other countries or for the West, the developed world. We can't try that in Africa. We can't just, duct tape it, wrap it, and try to copy and paste. No, it's not going to work that way. And so what I'm going to do in this talk, is I'm going to try to show you what has happened in the Nigerian music and movie industries. And I think also South Africa, more of the music in South Africa, I think it's happened as well. There have been some things, as in there's some lights and there's some glimmers of hope in there, and I think that it's something we should study as game developers and game designers to see how we can chart a course for Africa. So just to note, this is not only an African thing, it's all over, and the article up front, this guy was talking about it, and he was trying to be very, very careful with his words, but it amounted to the same thing. So he was playing a game, he had a black character, and the guy wasn't acting black. He didn't, the interpretation of the character was all wrong, so he has a black villain and he's putting the hand on his waist. This is not how we do. It's just not how we do. And it's not, I'm just saying, it's not just an African problem, it extends. And I think the black race is the only race I know of that does not have an active representation in the development side of the gaming industry. On the consumption side, I think we have a fairly healthy number of black gamers in Africa and outside, whether it's mobile, PC, platforms may be different, but yeah, there's healthy consumption, which also indicates to me that there's potentially a market. Yeah. So let's start with our gaming vision. So I'm going to make some very big predictions now, and I hope nobody here remembers, so that if 10 years from now, just blow over, or I don't know. Yeah. So like I said, we're bullish about Africa, and so we believe that in the next 5 to 10 years, games will emerge as one of the biggest entertainment media in Africa. And number 2 is that mobile gaming clusters will sprout out, on several parts of the continent. I love what I'm seeing here, by the way. I am so inspired and encouraged because we don't have anything here like this in Nigeria. There are a lot of people going indie or doing stuff in their spare time, but it hasn't come together quite as strongly as what I'm seeing here. So that's really great to see. Yeah. So this is. Please don't take a picture of this slide. Yeah, that's how we're bullish. Yeah. And yeah, so there's this group in South Africa, Uburu. You guys know? Okay. Okay, you do. Alright, but I heard you were big, and there's this artist in Nigeria called Davido. Do you know? He seems to be in with the culture, cool, and they released an album called The Sound, and I heard it was really big. When I picked this up, I thought everybody knew the group, and okay, well, but they won an MVCA recently, and that's just for me. That's awesome. That's incredible. That's amazing because 15 years ago, we didn't really have a music industry. We didn't have, if you listen to the local area radio, it was foreign music all through. The top 10 foreign music. But over time, within the last 15 years, we've developed a very vibrant music culture, and this has actually become something that is very exportable. We have stars now who are, featuring who are touring countries. Some of them have been to South Africa. I think they shoot a lot of their videos in South Africa, by the way, because they say you guys have a great, entertainment and video editing, thing going on. Yeah, but it's amazing to me because these guys came from nowhere, in a sense. They came from nowhere and they're doing so well now. They don't make money from album sales. They have they have a lot of challenges. Because in Nigeria, we have the piracy problem. So I was at an event and an artist was talking, and he'd done so much work on his album and was set to release it 2 weeks from then, and he's going off in traffic, and a vendor, a street vendor recognizes him and shows him his own album, trying to sell it to him 2 weeks before release. It's horrible. But these guys have found a way to make it work. And one of the things they did, they have a problem where I come from. They say, if you want to secure your property from a thief, keep it in the hands of a thief. Yeah? So that way, he's responsible for it, and that's what these guys did. So one of the first things they did is that they went to the guys that were pirating, and they cut a deal with them. So what they would do is that, I will sell you my album for a fixed fee, right? I'll sell it to you for a fixed fee. No matter how many units you produce and you sell, that's all you have to pay me. So the people pirating the albums now knew how to secure it from their fellow pirates, and the musicians still made money. So that was number one. Number 2 thing is that they set the price points ridiculously low. And so they set it to about 50 naira, which if I convert to rand, okay, let's say, to be on the safe side, about 2 rand 50 cents. Ridiculously low, so that the cost of pirating was pretty much the same as the cost of buying the album. Yeah, so they weren't really making money off of album sales. There was just a fixed amount of income. But over time, as the industry progressed, other channels started popping up. First of all, they could do tours, they could do shows. They started becoming brand ambassadors you know, any big brand wants to come into the country, or they want to get an aspect of the youth population, they find a brand ambassador who will probably be someone in music, movies, TV, that kind of thing. They started selling online as well. Digital distribution became a thing, and they started exploring other markets beyond Africa. But the biggest, in my mind, one of the biggest game changers was RBT, ringback tones. Do you guys have that in South Africa? When you call a number and you select the special tune, I want you to hear this tune whenever you call my number. Do you guys have that? You don't? Oh, okay, excellent, excellent. And that thing is such a big revenue earner for artists in Nigeria today. In fact, one of the top studio heads was saying that on an annual basis, the industry as a whole earns $150 million from RBT alone. And these guys are not selling albums, but they're doing pretty well. They're doing pretty decent. And you know, so that's our first case study. I wish. Okay, let me try this now. Do you recognize any of the characters here? I'm taking it while that now. Okay, who do you recognize? The top left or right? Top left. Yeah. The short dude. Aki. Yeah. Okay. So these are all Nollywood stars. And Aki is, popular for comedy because he's like twice my age, but like half my height. So he's always, getting into the mischievous roles and all of that. Bottom right. Okay, Tenshaw. Oh yeah, she's really cute. So these are Nollywood stars, and the movie industry also had the same challenges. In fact, when they started, they've been around a lot longer, like 25 years. But when they started, the stuff they did didn't qualify to be called movies. They called them home video. And it was sad because, that gives you an indication of the quality of what these guys are producing. They call them home video. I'm not making this up. Nobody qualified it as such. They did this themselves. And I'm like, oh. So we grew up, regular, kids, and we always made fun of them because the movies seemed crappy. They were very poorly done. These guys would turn out a movie in 2 weeks. They'll shoot in 1 week, they'll do the post-production the next week, and the movie is out. I kid you not, this is real stuff. But while we were laughing at them, interestingly, they had a market, and they were able to address that market and satisfy that market, and there was sufficient demand for them to continue doing what they were doing. I'll be honest, most of their consumers were the female demographic, because you really love romance and stuff like that. They weren't doing action flicks. It wasn't Mission Impossible type stuff. Everything is, someone stole my husband and I'm trying to get him back. Someone did juju on him so he doesn't love me anymore and he abandoned me with the kids. And then 10 years later, his eyes open and he comes back and he begs, for forgiveness, and the wife takes him back. Stuff like that. In fact, if you watch enough of them, the storylines sometimes seem pretty much the same, but they had an audience, and I'll tell you how big that audience was. I have an aunt who's based in the UK. She relocated, and after a while she became naturalized. Every time she would visit, she would get a whole chunk of Nollywood movies. And the first time she came back, she complained. She was like, I can't play any of these movies. And the reason was because they were using a non-standard format from somewhere in Asia, I don't know where, but it's called VCD. It wasn't produced by any of the major device manufacturers, so Sony, Philips, none of them were involved. It's not a standard protocol for video recording. But, so the next time she came, she bought a VCD player from Nigeria so that she could play those movies when she went to the UK, right? The interesting thing happened the third time she came. She bought the DVDs, or the VCDs rather, and this time she didn't come for a player. She said she didn't need one because her standard DVD player back in the UK now supported the VCD format. So the producers, the device manufacturers overseas realized that this market was so huge, they started supporting a non-standard format by default. And have you guys heard of Iroko TV?
Yes.
You've heard of Iroko? Great. So there's this dude who was based in the UK at around that time, and he saw that market, and he basically became the next Netflix of Africa. In fact, that's how he's described it in all the news articles. He's got coverage from Time, and all the other big news outlets. Because all he did was he secured the rights to stream these movies online. And so he has tons of subscribers in the UK, US, and it's spawned a phenomenon because these guys have spread across the continent. I was walking down the street the other day and I saw some caricatures of, I think, Haki and another one of, our artists, and I'm like, look, this is South Africa. I think I've seen some pictures in Kenya as well. Excuse me. And it's so mind-blowing to me. Okay, in Kenya, we got a driver and he was asking me, do you know Dakore? Like he had a question, and I was like, yeah, we're 150, 60 million people. How do you think I would know this particular artist? But it was almost like he had a crush on her. I said yes, he would come back with me to Nigeria, just to meet her. And it's amazing because they were just telling stories from their own perspective. They didn't realize that they were speaking for Africa. And today, it's a huge industry. The numbers are, I think, estimated at 560 million, dollars. It's the number 3 movie industry in the world. There's Hollywood, there's Bollywood, there's now Nollywood. In fact, they're the highest producers of movies in the world today. Estimated, they release about 40 movies a week. Yeah? That's crazy, right? That's just my body. Let me put it in perspective for you, right? I love The Matrix. Yeah? Does anyone? Matrix? Okay, yeah. Okay, there were never any sequels, there was just the one, right? You guys are with me on that. There's the one. Okay. Yeah,
I wish.
I'm one of those fans, So I know that their pre-production was about 3-4 months, and a lot of that time, they were teaching Keanu Reeves and what's this dude's name? Morpheus, Lawrence Fishburne. They were teaching them kung fu. He didn't just go, I know kung fu. That's not. That doesn't fool me. But to put it in perspective, that means these Nollywood guys would have done like 480 movies in that same period of time. These guys are gangsters. And that's pretty much my point. So what we did was we looked at what these guys have done and we tried to bring it together and we tried to, pretty much learn from it to project a path for, how games will work in Africa, because we can't try to do what's worked in other markets. And that's what these guys have done. If they try to do it like Hollywood, do big budget movies, if they try to average cost of producing a movie, I should say now, is about 40,000 USD. One of the reasons why they do it so fast is because they optimize costs that way. The less time they spend shooting, the less they spend in general to produce the movie, the less they have to pay the actors, etc., etc. But they found a way to do it, and they found a way to do it. Profitably. Another thing I should mention is that these guys also, they have deals with DSTV, so there are some localized channels in Nigeria right now, and all they do is show African movies, from beginning to end. It's not expanded, and they've started segmenting. So we have 3 major tribes in Nigeria, and now they do DSTV, the African Magic, they have for Yoruba, which is where I'm from, they have for Igbo, they have for Hausa. And so now that's also created a massive revenue channel for these guys. But they had to start, and they had to build it to a certain level before that opportunity opened up. But before that opportunity opened up, they were still doing it profitably. And that's really, really, really important for us, yeah? So what are the lessons? This is a very short talk, by the way, I'm almost done. This is probably my last slide. The first lesson for us is to tell our own stories. In Africa, we have such a rich culture. There's so much material to work with, but it hasn't been put out there. So the first thing is to tell our own stories. We're not trying to compete with anybody. We're not trying to do AAA at this point in time. We're not trying to do Need for Speed. We're not trying to do any of the big budgets type games for now, but we want to tell our stories because we feel very strongly that those stories are not being told, and we see that also as an opportunity. That's a space that the current market is not serving. Alternative monetization strategies. At the time the movie industry started, there were 0 cinemas operating in the country. There were 0. You couldn't, do a movie, take it to cinema, and then afterwards, release on DVD. There was nothing. There was nothing. In fact, the cinemas died out because of some political things that were happening in the country at the time. So the first cinema to reopen was in, I think, 2004, thereabouts. As at today, maybe there are like 4 or 5 active cinemas across the country for a country of 160 million people. Yeah, okay, ShopRite came to Nigeria, and everywhere they show up, the cinema tends to open up. So yeah, that's been a good export from South Africa. But it's really important to think differently about how you intend to monetize your content if you want to target this content. Another thing is low production budgets, not low quality. This is our own definition of what we want to do. We want to do it quickly, we want to do it really, really fast, but it doesn't mean we want to do low quality stuff. And as the Nollywood movie industry matured, the stuff got better. It got a lot better. In fact, I'm a believer of rapid iterations. Instead of putting all your eggs in one basket, if you can move quickly, if you can test ideas quickly and release them, your next iteration, your next idea, you're going to take all the lessons from all the previous trials and you're going to put it into the final product. So with time, we've been doing this for about a year now, and for my team, one of the challenges we had was talent. There was no talent on the ground. The average programmer in Nigeria, you tell them we want them to do a game design, they run away from you because they just believe making games are so freaking hard. Programming, writing code is hard enough. I don't want to make games. So we had to find people who share the vision, but even at that, we had to train them. But what I've noticed is that after each game we release, the quality keeps getting better because they take something from the previous and they put it into the new. So yeah, we want to do, because we intend for people to pay for our stuff, we want to do high quality stuff, but really compress the time. So right now our target is to release a new game every 6 weeks. Yeah? Which, I know it sounds crazy, but it's doable. It's doable. Right now the last one took us about 8 weeks, so we keep getting better. But that doesn't mean we're doing low quality stuff. It just means that we are addressing our market in a way we believe can be profitable on a long-term basis. Okay. And then, most importantly, we need to create our own distribution channels. One of the decisions we had to make recently was to pull our apps off of Google Play. And that's for a simple reason. We've redesigned things, we've done quite a few experiments, and we found out that one of the challenges was not that people didn't want to pay, it was that the price points were too high. So the minimum you can do in Google Play right now is about 99 cents. We want to do less than that. So what we've done now is that instead of selling our games separately, we've put it all together and we created a subscription bundle. So if you are willing to pay 30 Naira a week, give me some time to do the conversion again. Okay, so that's like $1.50. If you can do that on a weekly basis, you get access to all our games, plus the ones we're going to release in the future. And for us that's very interesting because we sat down, we did the math. We know it doesn't sound like much, but by the time we do, with 10,000, 20,000 subscribers, we pretty much can do very, very well because it's a subscription-based model. So that's what I'm talking about in terms of being innovative. But we found out that Google Play, because of the price points, number one, and number one, because there's so much stuff going in there, it's really, really hard for you to get discovered. And it's very, very hard for you to compete in those spaces. So we've actually started with creating our own channel, working through the mobile operators and promoting our content on those channels. And when we say we've taken them off Google Play, we've taken them off for Nigeria. We're also expanding into other African markets, And as we enter a new market, we'll be pulling it off of Google Pay for those markets specifically. So last thing I'll say, the most important is that it's possible. First of all, you have to believe, then you find a way. I believe there are some entrepreneurs in the room, and one of the things I always tell myself and my team is that a true entrepreneur always finds a way. Don't say, everybody will say it's impossible until someone just gets it done. You know, so that's the most important thing for me in my head. We don't have all the answers, but we know that.
Nobody sees you.
Sorry. But we know that it is definitely possible for Africa. So thank you very much. I think I'm done.